All right, let's get started. So I'm Clay. This is Jacob. We're from 0x. And we are the presentation formerly known as NFT liquidity on decentralized exchange. I think we threw out about 10 topics that we wanted to talk about, and I think that one was the top of the list, so it got picked, but we're going to actually talk about DEX user experience. So to kick things off, so that we don't put you on the spot, we have a couple questions that we want you to think about and we can come back to at the end with respect to UX for your end user applications. So one is, how can we as a collective group within DeFi work to present critical information to users about their interaction with the blockchain? And then what are some of the biggest challenges you're facing creating your end user experiences? So kind of gnaw on those for a little bit as we walk through some of our points of view. So to kick things off, and I spoiled a little bit of this during the Kyber presentation, but at 0x we have basically three answers to the question of who is our end user. And so that's our relayers, the folks that are building products and services on top of the protocol. So that's your Radar Relay exchanges, NFT marketplaces, games, and whatnot. We have traders, who are the ultimate end user that are interacting with these products and services that relayers are building. And then we have market makers that are working to provide liquidity to these various markets that are created by the relayers for traders. And so in our ecosystem, these three entities kind of create this flywheel effect that we like to think ultimately lowers the barrier to entry for new entrants into the ecosystem. So it starts with bringing on more relayers. So at its core, 0x is working to provide the developer tools that make it easy to build a decentralized exchange on top of 0x. And with that, easy use and great documentation, that allows us to bring more markets on board, whether that's for different asset types or geographies that are represented, which then brings in more traders that want to access these markets and have the ability to do so because of the number of them that exist. And as more traders come on board, this creates this really strong incentive for market makers to provide liquidity for these markets, which then starts to create this virtuous cycle, as Tom on our product team likes to say, that more liquidity begets more liquidity. The more assets there are supported, the better price discovery there is. The more liquidity there is, the more traders can exist. The more network liquidity there is across the ecosystem, which ultimately we believe is the catalyst for lowering the barrier to entry for new developers into the ecosystem, because instead of having to bootstrap your own liquidity from the start, you can just pull from any of our relayers that are running an open order book, and that allows you to begin building a decentralized exchange. And so today we're going to focus on one of the end users, that's the trader, because that's ultimately who's interacting with a lot of these products and services, and there's some common issues that we see within our ecosystem and the decentralized finance ecosystem writ large with respect to these folks. And so today we know two things. One, this is not the best user experience, right? It's slow, it's difficult in terms of the way that you have to get set up. You have to wrap Ether, set allowances, and then actually fill orders. And to find discovery, it sometimes takes time for even the order book to load. So it's not that great of an experience. And so we want to simplify it as much as possible. But what we also know is that simple products also have difficulty at times, whether it's a water glass or a simple iMessage app. It's really difficult for users to engage with applications at times. They're not using them the way that they're intended. And so this actually has particularly big consequences when it comes to movement of value or money, which we, decentralized finance, are all doing in some form or fashion. So we need to make sure that we can simplify this experience as much as possible. And so what does this mean to simplify? In the context of moving value, it's reducing uncertainty. So making sure that folks feel comfortable with moving value and taking a specific action with a specific product. And we think that's achieved through, one, educating the user about the action that they're about to take, and ensuring that they aren't uncertain about what sort of value they want to move, when, and how. And ultimately, over the long run, we think that this will build trust within the ecosystem and allow for more users to access the products and services provided by 0x relayers and decentralized finance protocols writ large. And so where are we today, Jacob?
Yeah, so I'm going to take you through a little bit of our journey, where we are today, and the kind of things we're focusing on to improve everything overall. So does anybody know what that window is? Does anybody know what's going on in that window? There's a lot going on. And there's some very good aspects here. And it's something that we should all be looking at engaging together and coming up with like a shared UX design language. So all of these things can kind of start to work in harmony. So one of the critical pieces here are like the blockies. Now, I've seen many different projects do different blockies. Doesn't work. Doesn't work if everyone kind of does blockies in a different way. People can't really trust that these blockies are the same. They don't get that feedback that this address and this same transaction that I'm doing is the same in all forms. So blockies are good, but like we need to kind of concentrate and do the same kind of blockies. And there's actually 3 here, which I'm not even sure what the bottom one is. So use them sparingly, use them appropriately, because you're trying to convince the user that this is safe, this is trust, and this is something that they've done before. So it's very important that we get the design language correct. Next one, yeah. Another very good thing is kind of abstracting and pulling out the ABI, or the thing that they're actually performing on the blockchain. So MetaMask is doing a great job here, and they're kind of bringing out the ERC20 approval method. This is something we'd really like to see, because then above you can actually see a description of what this approval means to the user. So we're educating the user here. By approving this action, you're granting permission for this contract to spend 1.158 whatever of your own WETH. So we're needing to kind of adopt the same methods within our dApps, within the signers, within everything, to come up with this shared language to educate our users in the same way. So this on the left here is something that used to be quite frequent in 0x. It's when you're signing an order as a maker, you're saying, I'm willing to sell my tokens for this token at a particular price. There is absolutely no information there for the user to verify that what they are signing is what they believe they are signing. There's also a giant red message here that pops up that kind of says this is very dangerous side effect, which doesn't really help convert the user into an actual, proper maker or trader. So we have been working hard on what we call EIP 712, which kind of, these are equivalent, but you can actually use EIP 712 to show the user what they're signing. And they can actually verify some of these values, like the maker address, the taker address, the amounts that they think they're trading. So it gives the user a lot more information. And as a DeFi community, we should kind of be moving together into basically creating this experience where it's the same. It's the same on Set Protocol, it's the same on 0x, it's the same on Kyber. It's just an experience that people can start to trust over time. So the one on the left, not good. The one on the right, better. But there's improvements we can make. So Clay, how are we compensating right now?
Yeah, so within kind of the dApp ecosystem today, we see a couple of different compensating behaviors taking place. But to highlight just one, this is a new app that hasn't quite launched yet, but will be rolling out soon, called Hashleets. It allows users to purchase different NFTs associated with their favorite NFL football players. So whether it's Aaron Rodgers, the quarterback, or the linebacking core for, I guess that's the Cleveland Browns. And so what we see today is in lieu of adopting all of this complexity associated with interacting with the blockchain like we've shown, they've actually tried to abstract it away completely and show it as a credit card transaction with the trusted elements that users are used to seeing, like the Visa logo, the last 4 digits of the card number, so you can verify that it is your card making the payment. And so this is great in that it provides a really seamless user experience. Folks will eventually interact with the blockchain in some sense. But we also think it's a little bit of a shortcut in that it's kind of delaying the inevitable, which is once you've secured this NFT, yes, you can interact with it within this app experience in that closed ecosystem, but anytime you want to begin to move it somewhere, sell it, auction it off, it becomes difficult to do in that you haven't actually been primed to interact with the elements that we just showed before. And so while this isn't a perfect end user solution and is a bit of a shortcut, it is one of the compensating behaviors we see in the ecosystem today. And so where are we going? So we just rolled out a closed beta of a new feature called 0x Instant, which is a set of JS, TypeScript, and React Native libraries that allow for one-click purchase of any ERC20 or 721 asset. And because the 0x protocol is extensible, it'll represent more token standards as those roll out. And it makes use of what's called the forwarding contract, which bundles together those main points of friction that we see in the end user experience, which is wrapping ETH, setting allowances, and making the trade. And also, while you still have to interact with the MetaMask module, we work to abstract away some of the complexity of sort of waiting and work to provide certainty around some of the elements associated with this transaction. So you can see at the top there, you can verify, hey, I'm purchasing 25.5 rep. Once you've clicked buy, instead of having to quickly go and check Etherscan, we have a progress bar that is kind of pleasant to look at and says, well, at least something's happening. And then at the end, you have a nice confirmation that shows that, hey, the transaction's completed. So while, again, similar to Jacob's point around EIP 712, it's not the perfect end state, but it's at least our attempt to move progress forward. And also, one other element you can see there is with the order details, we work to simplify some of the fee line items and the like. And so this is all open source, free to use, so the UI isn't something that folks have to use, it's totally optional, but we think at least it'll help to kickstart some of the thinking around how user experience should look moving forward.
Yeah, just back onto the EIP 712 example again. So we've worked hard to get the signing down, but the transaction data is still quite opaque. So even though the user is basically submitting that message on chain, you don't know what that is actually going to do. So we should probably work together for another EIP, which can do something similar to EIP 712, but for transaction data, where you can decode the ABI and see what it's going to do, and maybe even see the after effects of, if I actually do submit this, what are the balance changes going to be? What's it going to look like? So that's one thing we should be working together as a community going forward. Click next. And one thing we're moving towards in 0x is actually batching up a lot of these signed messages into one transaction, so it reduces the overall interaction for the user at the end of the day. They don't have to wrap the ETH, set their allowances, do all this stuff. We're kind of bundling it all together and submitting one single transaction. So the less exposure for the user with the blockchain, we think is better. One other interesting thing we are kind of seeing relayers do is basically submit these signed messages on the user's behalf. So the relay is submitting these messages. The user doesn't even need ETH, doesn't need to send any transaction, because the relayer or this third party is actually able to submit it for them. So they may not realize they're using the blockchain at one point in time. And I think this can be also greatly improved. I'd love to start to see the concept of address books and some token iconography where we can start to tell the user that, hey, this is trusted, this is safe. We can start to incorporate user-based heuristics or social proofing, where when you're sending ETH, it would be good if it would say, hey, you've actually done this before, so maybe you can worry a little bit less about it. You did copy-paste that address correctly. Or maybe some social proofing where some information such as 30 participants have used this contract in the last 24 hours. So you're not just sending it to a dead address, or maybe this contract itself hasn't been reported in any mechanism. So there's some reputation-based things to build up trust for the user.
Yeah, and so that's just a couple of the things that we've been thinking about with respect to our ecosystem, but we also think it has broader implications for DeFi writ large. And so I showed these questions at the beginning. Hopefully you've been thinking about them a little bit. So I want to open it up, I guess, to the first one, or either, what are some of the pieces of critical information that maybe we didn't cover today that we should be thinking about as an ecosystem to begin surfacing to users in a more simplified fashion? Or what are some of the challenges that you're facing, whether it's building one of the complementary protocols that's associated with 0x, or possibly an end user dApp? Don't all speak at once. Yeah.
A lot of concepts from traditional way we do things can be useful. I really like the padlock idea, because it goes back to HTTPS. And I think there are a lot of things that are new already in the user. We shouldn't make more new things unnecessarily and make it complicated. But I'd say like borrowing concepts from traditional verification, maybe, I don't know if you're looking at wallet history already, trying to like verify that you just have been involved in any blacklisted activities. Sure.
Yeah, totally, I agree. Like it's tough for us as like a protocol to kind of do this, so we need to work with like the signers and sort of stuff to basically meet in the middle. So that's kind of like why we're kind of bringing it up here, is because there's only so much we can do, but together we can actually increase confidence for the user by getting some user heuristics and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think that the padlock or heuristics has broader implications for larger institutions that may be a lot more risk averse or have compliance considerations, where maybe a certain DApp is comfortable with exchanging with an address that is 2 degrees removed from a known blacklisted address that the IRS or the FBI has flagged as conducting nefarious activity, whereas a financial institution may have a higher upper bound threshold of 6 degrees of separation or something like that. So these types of heuristics can help to solve that issue.
So I know you guys are working on a white label exchange UI. Does that allow you to create sort of standards around new things that you haven't been able to think about before? And if so, what would those be?
What do you mean by standards in that regard? Or?
Well, in the same way that you could standardize sort of the lock for a certain address or have a reputation system, does having that sort of a more control over the potential user flow for the entire process give you new opportunities to create standards around interaction?
Yeah, so I don't think it's necessary, like we are working on like a white label kind of relayer, but I don't think these concepts are going to fall into that, because I really do believe they need to live in the wallet, or they need to live in other places. Like MetaMask is the perfect place to have an address book. The DApp is not necessarily the place to have an address book, because you can't transfer that around to different DApps. So there's only so much we can actually do. We can work on like the protocol level stuff like EIP 712 and come up with these ideas and hope they bubble up and become adopted. But it really is like a meet in the middle approach where we kind of have to work with the entire ecosystem.
But with respect to standards from a usability standpoint, we can start to make suggestions around different elements that could be standardized if we had created some sort of a template that was associated with that white label exchange. But again, because of the open source nature and the fact that everyone is trying to create their version of the best user experience, whether that's adopted or not is kind of TBD. And so it's something we can suggest, but ultimately it's at the discretion of the developer as to whether it's implemented or not. Yeah.
What steps are you guys taking to incentivize more an order book, like a public order book amongst your layers?
I think just the open order book concept itself is a pretty good incentivization, because you can share liquidity everywhere.
But the fees is an issue at the moment, isn't it? The way fees are shared between.
Fee sharing is an issue, yeah, totally. So it's a very tough issue to it's an expensive gas issue to try and solve on chain right now. So we are actively thinking about it, but we haven't got anything basically in the pipeline right now.
Yeah, and one thing that I just showed with 0x Instant is that user interface and the engine that will power the exchange functionality in any website, product, or application. That makes use of all of the shared liquidity within the 0x ecosystem. So you have the ability to call any of the endpoints, whether it's the Radar SRA endpoint or any of the other relayers that we have within the ecosystem. And so if Instant is as successful as we hope it will be in that in bringing in additional taker liquidity into the ecosystem, then ultimately that provides a really strong incentive for folks to adopt the open order book standard, because it is more at bats, if you will, to have their orders surfaced and taken by what are largely price agnostic retail traders.
Was that the affiliate fee in Forder?
Oh no, just the fact that Instant allows for surfacing of all of the shared liquidity across 0x. Yeah,
and I guess with 0x Instant, you can also charge an additional fee on top. So it's not necessarily the relayers that are sharing liquidity, but it's the person who sources the liquidity, that relayer, and the end website where they implemented 0x Instant, they can kind of collect fees, but all those people in between, that's where it gets difficult to basically split the fee across all of them.
I heard you said you're still in beta or closed beta for Instant?
Yep.
What's that about?
Yeah, so we're looking for folks to build on 0x Instant today. If you're interested, definitely feel free to come up and give us a shout. I think what we're looking for is a set of use cases that kind of span the gamut of sort of the traditional exchange experiences that folks are used to, but also new exchange experiences where you may not think that they would be implemented. Because we think that at the end of the day, Instant is a new way for different products that may have not had a monetization path to begin with, the ability to monetize their product via implementing this exchange functionality and the affiliate fee. So yeah, it's a closed beta, but as folks have shown interest, we've definitely not said no.
Yeah, so 0x Instant is built on top of the forwarding contract, and it is that droppable UI component. So we're seeing some teams want to not use the droppable UI component, so they have a holistic experience within their dApps, but for the droppable component, then it is closed beta, but it's open if you just send us an email.
How are we doing on time? Any other questions, thoughts, posits, commentary? If not, we can let you get to lunch a little early.
Is anybody here using EIP 712 in their dApps at all? Okay, cool. You should be, yeah. Yeah, so we're making heavy use of it. We've got examples of how to use it. The EIP itself also has like an example implementation. MetaMask supports it. I believe Coinbase Wallet, if they're in this room, they are working on it as we speak, I hope. So it should start to roll out to more and more signers soon, and hopefully make its way into hardware devices eventually as well. Cool,
Great.
yeah, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening.